Welcome everyone as we learn the segment called For the Shabbos Table, made possible by a generous grant from the Reuben family with the request that we have in mind that they should be Zeicha to a Ben Zachar and for their Hatzlach and Ruchnias and Gashmias. We also want to learn for the Refuah Shalema of my Shver, Avigdor Aryeh ben Rivka. They should have a Refuah Shalema V'seich Shar Chele Yisrael. As we come to this Yom Tov, the Yom Tov of Shvi Shel Pesach, it celebrates the great miracle of Krias Yamsuf, of the splitting of the Red Sea. The miracle of Krias Yamsuf was one of the greatest miracles of all time. It says that when the Yamsuf split, all the waters around the world split. So this was something that was done in order that the entire world should recognize that Hashem was saving His nation and punishing those that afflicted our people. The simple understanding of the miracle of Krias Yamsuf is one of Midah Keneged Midah. And that is that since they drowned our babies, remember that was the final solution of Paro, Hava Nischak Maloi, let us deal wisely with the Moshiach and Shel Yisrael. How should we punish and mete out destruction to the Jews? Paro said, well, their God only punishes measure for measure. And he said that he won't bring a flood on the world anymore. So therefore it's safe to attack them with the water. So Kol ben Ayilaid Haya'ira Tashlichua. He didn't know two things. He didn't know that Hashem said He won't bring a flood on the entire world, but on one nation He would bring it. And he didn't know that He won't, just said He won't bring water to the sinners. He didn't say that He wouldn't bring the sinners to existing water. And therefore, Midah Keneged Midah, since they drowned our babies in the water, therefore they were drowned in the Yamsuf. And as Yisro said, Atu Yadati, now I know, Ki Hashem Hu Elokim, Ki Badover Asher Zodu, for that which they plotted, right? Ki Badover Asher Zodu, Osu Lahem. That which they plotted happened to them. And Rashi says, Yozid is also a lotion of a stew, like Yaakov made a Nezid Adoshim, a lentil stew. And Rashi says, B'kdeira shebishlu, in the pot that they cooked, Bobi Shelu, they got cooked. The problem with this is a very simple question. When was the last baby drowned in the Nile? Well, the last baby that drowned in the Nile was 80 years before we left Egypt. You see, Paro's astrologers saw in the stars that the Jewish leader will be stricken with the water. And therefore he said, put the babies in the water. Yocheved came up with this brilliant idea that will put Moshe Rabbeinu in a teva, put him in the water. Then the astrologers will see that the Jewish leader was put in the water, and they'll stop the decree. That's what happened. It says that Moshe Rabbeinu was the last baby to be put in the water. But before they got a chance to recover Moshe Rabbeinu, Bisya came and took him. But therefore the last baby that was drowned was Moshe. That's why he was called Moshe min hamayim mishisu. He caused all other babies to be saved from the water. Now Moshe Rabbeinu was 80 when they left Egypt. So the last baby that was drowned was 80 years before. So therefore, these 9 million Egyptians that chased us, not one of them was guilty of drowning Jewish babies. In order for them to be guilty of drowning Jewish babies, they had to be, if let's say they were 20 when they drowned the babies, they would have to be 100 years old. No troops are 100 years old. So what's the Mida Keneged Mida? None of these people ever drowned a Jewish baby. Very big question. This question was asked by the Maril Diskin. Now the Maril Diskin gives two answers. The first answer he gives is that the 9 million Egyptians that drowned were Gilgulim, were reincarnations of the ones that drowned the Jewish babies. That's one answer. You only have to be the great Maril Diskin, to say such an answer. That's one answer. But then he gives an incredibly brilliant answer. The next answer he gives is that the reason that they drowned in the Yam Suf wasn't because they drowned the Jewish babies in Egypt. It's because these 9 million Egyptians that were chasing us, what did they want to do to us? They wanted to drive us into the sea. Remember, it says, Sagar Aleim Hamidbar. They were locked in the desert. On one side were the 9 million Egyptians. On the other side was the huge idol Baal Tzephon, the one idol that Hashem left to them. On one side were the venomous snakes and scorpions, and one side was the Yam. And these 9 million were charging to drown us into the Yam Suf. And therefore they drowned in the Yam Suf. It wasn't what happened 80 years before. It was what they wanted to do. There's a different pshat in Rashi. And this, by the way, answers another kasha that the Chassam Sofer asks. The Chassam Sofer says if it was Mida Keneged Mida, then the Egyptians should have drowned in the Nile, not in the Red Sea. They drowned our babies in the Nile, so they should have been drowned in the Nilus, in the Nile. Why did they drown in the Red Sea? And the answer is because they're getting punished because they wanted to drive us into the Red Sea. And since they wanted to drive us into the Red Sea, that's why they drowned in the Red Sea. Now, it says that when we came to the Yam Suf, and Moshe Rabbeinu raised the stick, when he came to the Yam Suf, what happened is the Yam did not want to split. The Yam didn't want to split. Because the Yam said, I flow Misheshes Yimei Bereishis, from the 6 days of creation. Now what do we say when we say Kiddush Levana? We say, Chaykuzman Nasan Lahem Shelo Yishanu Es Tafkida, that you shouldn't change your way. Right? Hashem gave them a statute and a time, and they pride themselves. Shelo Yishanu Es Tafkidam. They don't change their job. So the sea didn't want to change. It says, I have a teva, I'm going my teva. What did the sea see? Excuse the pun. What did the sea see that it changed its mind and it split? So we know that it says, we say it in Hallel, Mo ro'a hayom sheyonas. So the Medrash says, what did the sea see that it fled? The Medrash said, Ra araynai shel Yosef. It saw the coffin of Yosef. Or as the Medrash says elsewhere, Nos mipnei hanos. It fled from the one that fled, Yosef HaTzadik, who fled from the great temptress, the wife of Potiphar. So the sea fled from the one that fled. Now this needs study. What do you mean? Moshe Rabbeinu was there. Aaron was there. Hur was there. The Zekanim were there. And it only fled, Moshe Rabbeinu was alive, Yosef was dead. And it only fled from Yosef. What was the ingredient that Yosef had? So in order to explain this, let me tell you a medrash in Parshas Lech Lecha. In Parshas Lech Lecha it says that a couple came to the great miracle worker Reb Chanina ben Daisa and said to Reb Chanina ben Daisa, we're married 10 years in Eretz Yisrael and we didn't have children. What do we do? So in those days, when they were married 10 years in Eretz Yisrael and they couldn't have children, the Rav gave them the eitzah they should get divorced and each one should marry another spouse. Maybe they'll be able to fulfill yet the lofty life's purpose of procreation, of Pir Verivia. But the rabbi told them, when you're getting divorced, I want you to make a celebration like you made when you were married. Now they scratched their head, but in those days people really listened to the rabbi. So they sent out invitations. We invite you to the Sudas Gerushin, to the feast of our divorce, and people came. For the husband and wife, it was a tearful time. The husband turned to his devoted wife, who he loved dearly, and said, we're only doing this because the rabbi said so. But in a show of my real love for you, of course we're going to divide our assets equitably. But in my love for you, I want to give you the first choice. If you want the house, it's yours. If you want the cows, they're yours. You take what you want first. When she heard that, she plied her husband with very, very strong and old wine until he dozed off. When he fell asleep, she had the servants carry him to her father's house, and in the morning he woke up in his in-laws' house. He looks around, he says, what am I doing here? She said to him, my dear husband, you told me that I should take what I want. You're what I want. So he looked, he was touched, but he said, but what do we do? The rabbi said we should get divorced. So she said, let's go back to the rabbi and tell him the story. They went back to Reb Chanina ben Daisa. He listened and he said, Im Yirtzeh Hashem, you'll be blessed with a child in 9 months. Go home and be well. And 9 months later, they had a child. That's the medrash. The medrash is a medrash pliya. If Reb Chanina ben Daisa, we know from the Gemara, was a miracle worker, the Gemara in the third parak of Tanis tells us many miracles that Reb Chanina ben Daisa did. If we know that he was a miracle worker, so why didn't he give them a blessing right away to have a child? What's this business of a divorce party? It sounds so cruel. A divorce party? So listen carefully to the pshat in the medrash. Reb Chanina ben Daisa, with his Ruach HaKodesh, saw that al pi derech hateva, this couple will never have children. He understood that the only way possible for them is if they did something really shaloi kederech hateva, against their nature. If they did a mitzvah against their nature, then he would be able to be mispalel shaloi kederech hateva. So he gave them a mitzvah. He said, why do you make a simcha when you get married? Because you're celebrating the mitzvah period of Arivia. He says, now that you're getting divorced, you're also getting divorced for a period of Arivia. So you should also make a simcha. But knowing that they were in love, to make a simcha about the divorce, that was very shaloi kederech hateva. But they did it. Once they did shaloi kederech, listened to the Rav and did shaloi kederech hateva, then he was able to be mispalel for them that Hashem should do for them shaloi kederech hateva. And it's the same thing by the Yamsuf. The Yamsuf, the teva was that it should flow. It needed Yosef, who was tempted. It says that the wife of Potiphar changed her clothing 150 times a day. You know, in a hotel, the women change their clothing maybe 3 times a day. But she changed 150 times a day. She was the temptress. Yosef had to go very much against his nature. It says that he ran away and he left his clothes by her. That's how she was able to say that he slept with me, because otherwise, why do I have his clothes? He's stronger than me. But he knew that if he would grab his clothes, he would be finished. He really went shaloi kederech hateva. When he went shaloi kederech hateva, the yam also had to go against its nature and split. We have to know there's a tremendous lesson from this. And that is, if a person wants to change something in their life, maybe b'derech hateva they're not supposed to have it. But if they do something shaloi kederech hateva, if they stretch themselves and really go against their teva, here's a person, b'derech hateva, he likes to look at women, but he really conquers his roving eyes and works on loisasuru achrei levavchem v'achrei einechem. Then he could ask Hashem things shaloi kederech hateva. Here's another person. He's been talking in shul for 30 years. That's his teva. He's a friendly guy. He can't sit the whole time. But he really works shaloi kederech hateva on es mikdashi tiro. Then he could ask Hashem for something. Here's a person who is a screamer. He screams in the house when he gets upset. He works on his teva. He changes it. Then he could ask Hashem shaloi kederech hateva. Now this ties in to another facet of Krias Yamsuf. And that is, why did the sea split? It says, L'gayzer Yamsuf l'gezarim. Hashem split the sea for those that cut themselves. L'gayzer Yamsuf l'gezarim. The Yamsuf split in the schus of Mila. You see, remember in Agada we dipped into the cup twice. Verach lach mispaiseses b'damayich v'amalach b'damayich hayi v'yaimalach b'damayich hayi. The 2 bloods are the Dam Pesach and the Dam Mila. Now the Dam Pesach is what we put on our doorposts, on the lintel, and Hashem passed over our house. The fact that we circumcised ourselves was a big thing. Before we could eat the Korban Pesach, we circumcised ourselves. We didn't circumcise ourselves in Mitzrayim. It says, Kishemeis Yosef, Heiferu Bris Milah. The miracle of the circumcision, which we don't talk about in the Haggadah, except for this reference, that was the reason why the sea split. L'gayzer Yamsuf l'gezarim. The sea split for those that cut themselves. So you'll say, what does the Mila have to do with Krias Yamsuf? It's very interesting that it says that Yachatz, when we break the matzah, Yachatz represents Krias Yamsuf. We break the matzah, it's splitting of the Red Sea. So it fits in very good, because first we have the first kais of Kiddush, that's V'lakachti, And after he takes us out, then he split the Red Sea. That's Yachatz is Bigamatria Chayk. Right? Yud is 10, Ches is 8, it's 18. And, Yud is 10, Ches is 8, is 18. And Tzadi is 90, that's 108. Chayk is 108, that's the Milah. Chayk b'shei roisam. And to prove that, right after Yachatz, what words do we say? Halachma. Halachma is Bigmatria Milah. The Krias Yamsuf was B'schus Milah. What's the connection? So if you look in the Chinuch, the master of the mitzvahs, the Chinuch asks a very obvious question. The Chinuch says, why did Hashem make it that we should be born with an orla? The Gemara says orla is mo'os, it's loathsome. Now all the other creatures were created perfect. It was all very good. But man was created with this flaw. Why? So the master of the mitzvah says it's to teach us that just like we have flaws in our body, so we have flaws in our character. Each one of us has flaws in our character. And to change our character, woo! The Vilna Gaon says that it's harder to change one thing in a character than to learn the entire Shas. How to change a character? That's going against your nature. That's Milah. We go against our nature, as we said, that causes the seed to split. That's the lesson of L'Geizer Yamsuf L'Gezarim. And that's the tremendous reminder of Milah, that we remember that just like our bodies are not perfect, our character isn't perfect. Each one of us has to know. Now it's very hard, because we're Teflon coated. We don't see our faults. We have a blind spot to our faults. So we need to learn Musar. We need to have people tell us. Some people are greedy. Some people are stingy. Some people are lazy. Some people are angry. Some people are arrogant. Some people are self-centered. And we have to know what we have to work on. And when we work on that, as we said, when we work to stretch ourselves and change our nature, then Hashem will listen to us to change even things that are not supposed to be for us, our Shalei K'derech HaTeva, and He will grant us. We want to thank very much the Rubin family for making this share possible. I want to say that we do not have a sponsor for next week's share on Shmini. We are looking for such a sponsor. 718-916-3100, rmmwsi@aol.com. Thank you very much for joining us, and have a wonderful evening, a good Shabbos, and a good Yom Tov.
Have a good Yom Tov, Shkaya.
Yom Tov.
But what time after Yom Tov?
10 o'clock.
Thank you. Good Yom Tov.
Good Yom Tov.